Greetings from the medieval city of Limerick on the southwest coast of Ireland, otherwise known as the Emerald Isle, and a Céad of Fáilte to my story. I am Mary Honan, and through the magic of the internet, our shows are available across the globe. My story invites people from all walks of life to share their own individual stories, some happy, some very sad, and many recalling the very worst experiences of man's inhumanity to man. On today's show, my truly special guest is Figen Murray OBE, the mother of Martyn Hett. Martyn was one of 22 people who lost their lives in a terrorist attack at the Ariana Grande concert in May 2017. Figen has since publicly forgiven the terrorist Salman Abedi, who took his own life in the bombing, and she has completed a counter-terrorism master's degree shortly after the atrocity to try and understand why her son was killed. On Friday, the 24th of June, Figen was awarded an OBE by Prince William, the Duke of Cambridge, at Buckingham Palace. Hello, Figen. How are you?
Hello. Hi, good evening. I'm very well, thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. I've tried for so long, but you're an incredibly busy woman since you did your counter-terrorism masters. Very interesting course, I'd imagine.
It was, yeah, and it gave me all the answers I needed.
It's amazing. You go through life and you never imagine where your life trajectory will take you. And little did you know when you were doing your psychotherapy courses and everything, and working as a psychotherapist, that you'd end up doing counterterrorism. It's amazing the way the trajectory life takes people.
It does, yes. And actually, obviously I would never have thought I'll study something like that, but I'm really glad I did.
And you got a first in it. Congratulations.
I did, yes. Thank
you. Well done. Isn't we mature students, any one of us that have gone, I did all my college courses as a mature student, and I think you're more applied. You know what you want, and you work. You know how to work to get the results you want.
Yeah, and the funny thing was I was actually older than my tutors.
Me too, when I was doing my courses. Yeah, and it's great. I just think that I'm a great believer in lifelong learning. A huge believer in it. But Figen, what brought the two of us together was, a sad, really dreadful situation was the killing of your son Martyn, along with 22 others at the Ariana Grande concert. Bring me back to that day, Figen, and tell me how you found out about it, because I know in one interview you said you knew he was gone.
Yeah, mother's intuition, I guess. Until that day, I was actually we were an ordinary family. I was just minding my own business. I was the mother of 5, had a busy household, and was self-employed as a psychotherapist and life coach, ran my own practice at home, from home, in my basement. And that day was no different. I was working all day. And I only had 2 of my kids still living at home, my youngest 2 daughters. And they were at the time 16 and 19. That particular day I had been working, and I went to bed early that night because I felt a little bit off color. And I went to bed at 10, and my 2 daughters were in their respective bedrooms. One was revising for her GCSE exams. The other one was doing an undergraduate course at uni, and she was preparing an art exhibition for that. So, and my husband stayed downstairs watching the news and watching TV and doing paperwork. And I must have fallen asleep straight away, because the first thing I knew was at about 10 minutes after the attack, about 11:15 that evening, I woke up because my older daughter had my mobile phone in her hand. And I was a bit irritated because it's my phone. And I thought, what's she doing with my phone? I said. And she said, Mum, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to wake you. I was just checking if Martyn tried to ring you or text you. And I said, well, why would he do that? Isn't he at home in his flat? And because he was supposed to go on the Wednesday that week on a 2 month of a trip of a lifetime around America, and I was supposed to take him to the airport as he
He'd
wanted.
been saving for he had been saving for 2 years for that.
That's right. Yeah, he's been saving religiously for 2 years, and and he was so excited about it. So I honestly thought he's at home getting ready for the trip. But unbeknown to me, they'd gone to this concert. So um, Louise said, "Well, look, his friends keep texting me, and they're frantic. They're looking for him because there's been an incident." And I said, "What do you mean by incidents?" And by that time, I was obviously wide awake, sat up in bed, and looked a bit puzzled, thinking what on earth would happen on a Monday night in Manchester. And she said, "Mum, there's very reluctantly." She said it. She said there's been an explosion, and she hadn't even finished the word. I ran behind her, almost flew down the stairs, and my husband was just about to come to bed. He was stood by the television watching the news flash. And I pointed at the TV, I said, you know what, Martyn is there and his mates can't find him. They're all out, thankfully, but they don't know where he is. I hope he's okay. And he looked
Yeah,
at me and then smiled and said, Figen, that place holds over 20,000 people. You know what he's like. He always leaves concerts early, which actually was true, but that night he didn't. And I can't even in my head go to points like, oh, if only he hadn't stayed and if only he hadn't gone. I don't do that because it's
Do you
unhealthy.
believe? Are you a believer in fate?
I,
Um,
I, yeah,
that
do you know what? It's interesting you should say that because people said to me at the beginning, he was at the wrong place at the wrong time. But you know what? I've reflected a lot on this, and I think he was exactly where he needed to be.
Gary was meant to be
It was his time to go, and I do believe actually that our destiny is determined from the
predetermined.
moment we conceived. Actually, so but
I
that
do too,
evening,
Fiona. I do
you
too.
yeah,
Yeah,
um, and it's not because I have to believe it to make myself feel better. I genuinely believe that. So sad as it is for the people who are left behind, obviously. But that night, so Louise and I sat up, obviously, because his friends were continuing to message us and text us and phone us. And they were by that time also walking around hospitals to try and find him. But possibly about 45 minutes after the attack, I touched my tummy and I said, "Oh," um, and I said, "I can't feel him anymore." And she said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "It's like somebody's cut off the connection. Um, I just simply have no sense of him whatsoever. He's gone. I think he's dead. It feels like he's not even on the planet anymore." And about 24 hours later, we had it officially confirmed that Martyn was one of the 22 people. But I absolutely, it didn't come as a surprise when we were told. I just knew.
what was your initial reaction? I suppose because people react so differently to grief and react. You hear people saying, "Oh, I we've a good friend who was my mother's bridesmaid when she got married. She can't cry, and even when her husband died and he was killed in a bus crash, she couldn't
Hmm.
cry, and for many years she couldn't cry, and that was the way she was. And other people can't
Yeah.
stop crying, or some people feel anger towards you. Clearly found it within yourself to forgive Salman Abedi.
Hmm.
Not sure I could go to that place that you did, but I can understand it because
Yeah.
in a sense, when you're holding on to bitterness, it's only harming yourself and preventing yourself from moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, how did I react? Well, I didn't cry that evening because I had kids to comfort, my other children to comfort, and Martyn's friends to comfort. Because by the time we were actually told to go to the Etihad football stadium, and that's where we were told we were taken into a site. Well, each of the families who had a loved one die, we were taken into a side room, and 10 minutes later, people would come out crying, and we knew it was bad news. Anyway, 9:45 that evening, it was our turn to go into the side room, and we knew it's going to be bad news. But so it was difficult, and obviously I spent a lot of time crying, but that was always in the still of the night, in my husband's arms mainly, or in the car when I was driving on my own. I'd be crying and screaming and shouting, um, just to get my grief out. But publicly, I don't cry. And that's because, do you know what? I always think a terrorist might watch me, and I don't want to give them the satisfaction. I know it sounds silly,
No,
but the
I
other,
can again, I
do
can
you know what I
understand
mean?
that
It's
perfectly.
but I have been accused on social media that I am unemotional and I don't show any feeling. I don't look like a grieving mother. I had all those comments, and what people don't, they need to remember also, I suppose, that I trained.
As a
I've worked,
counselor.
oh, well, I've worked 2.5 decades as a therapist, where we were trained not to burst out crying in front of people because you hear sad stuff all the time as a therapist. So I'm conditioned not to show that deep of a kind of emotion publicly. I just don't do it. I can do it privately, but never publicly. Um,
As a therapist, though, Figen, looking at yourself from the perspective of a therapist, what would you say to yourself as a client about the importance of being able to let out what you're what and I suppose giving vent to your anger and to your emotions and not locking it in. I know you say you had a great husband and he was there for you, so you were able to grieve in front
yeah,
of him.
yeah. Well, first of all, I've not been angry from the word go. I have never ever been angry about what happened. And I remember going to the GP very early on because I could not sleep. I wanted to just have a few sleeping tablets to just rest my body really and my head. And he said, "You know what, with what happened to you, I need to ask you, do you feel suicidal?" And I said, "Oh gosh, no, no, of course
No,
not." And
you
then I
had
was
to.
actually shocked that he asked me. And then he said, "Well, okay, do you feel depressed?" And there was almost an expectation of him that I say, "Yes, I feel depressed." And I said, "Actually, no, I don't feel depressed either. The only emotion, and that's till today, is that 5 years on, I still have the same emotion. The only emotion I have is sadness. That's
Yeah.
all I feel, sadness. No anger, no, I wish it hadn't happened, because I feel, as I said earlier, Martyn was where he needed to be. Martyn always said he's not going to see his 30th birthday,
Isn't
and
that
he was
amazing?
29 and a half, he died. He always said he's going to die a spectacular death. And after his death, one of his friends said he's got funeral arrangements on his laptop, and they were all there. All the arrangements for his funeral were there.
Isn't it amazing the outpouring of respect and love there was for Martyn? I'm looking at this
Yes,
particular photograph, and
yes,
the and a colleague of mine in Irish dancing. He was very good friends with Martyn, Lawrence Morgan, and
okay,
he told me about Martyn. He was talking about how a friend of his had been killed in the Manchester bombing. John is now living in the United States teaching dancing, but he was friendly with Martyn as well, and he actually when you know someone who knows someone, it brings it actually more close to you. I suppose it's not this anonymous
yeah,
atrocity that happened um, in far off countries, or that
mhm,
though they themselves are horrific as well. But when you know somebody who knows somebody, or you know somebody that's involved themselves, it
mhm,
makes it all more poignant, I suppose, and stark.
yes.
Was it about you, Figen, that was able, in many respects, to show when you looked at Salman Abedi's photograph and you said all you could say was "you stupid boy"?
Yeah. So obviously, when it happened, we didn't have the news on because I didn't want it was all over the news constantly, and I didn't want the family to be more upset. So we simply didn't have the TV or radio on at all. But somebody kept buying newspapers from the shop across the road and piling them on top of the dining room table, and there was this stack building up. And on day 3, I happened to walk past the table, and I froze on the spot because I looked on the front page, and there was the picture of the terrorist, and it's the first time I'd seen a picture of it. And I looked and read underneath that he was only 22 or 23. And I literally thought, you stupid, foolish boy, why on earth would you do that? What would you know at that age about life, about politics, about anything to do something like that? How would you at that age even realize and recognize the consequences of what you did? And that shocked me.
You know, it's a deeply compassionate thing to feel for the person who has taken. But and I do understand exactly when you say that it's the people who controlled him, the people who uh, got him involved in that way of thinking, the people who radicalized him, who are the people that you need to actually get to.
Yeah.
Once someone has been radicalized, I would imagine it's pretty difficult to de-radicalize somebody. It's much more easy to get youngsters when they haven't been radicalized. I presume that's what you're trying to do with your work,
Yeah,
going for
yeah,
schools.
yeah, absolutely. So obviously the first year I couldn't do anything. We were deep in grieving and we moved house as well. Not because Martyn died. Martyn knew we were moving house. We'd sold the house before he died. But the first year I was not able to do anything. But the day after the anniversary, I remember saying to my husband, the anniversary is over now. I feel I can start breathing again, but I now need to go and do some work. I want to go to speak to young children about the dangers of online radicalization. Because, like you said, I don't, I have never seen him as the evil person.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, I even feel 23 people died that day, not 22. The terrorist was a human being as well at some point, a decent one. Because when you think of the bigger picture and you look right back, and that's one of the skills I had from my therapy days and training, when you lift yourself above a situation and right above and look down, I looked from so far up that I actually saw the terrorist as a young baby. And I thought, you were born an innocent child one day and somebody put these ideas in your head. And that is one of the reasons why I was able to forgive. But I also felt then that young people need to be warned of the dangers out there. And that's why I go to a lot of schools. Up to
Do you
now, I've
think
seen about
do you
20,000 children.
do you think that being vulnerable, these groups and these radicalizers, if that's a
Mhm.
word, they see the vulnerability in people, and they recognize people whom they can, I suppose, engage in their ideological views. Do you think it's very important to that um, that this starts in homes? Do you work much with
Yes.
families to make sure that their youngsters feel, that their children feel a sense of belonging and a sense of success within their own home, and that they're not going to try and. I know that my research looked at childhood under Nazism, and
Mhm.
like you, Figen, I've interviewed people who were children of Nazis, and people would say, well, they weren't victims, but they were in a sense, because they never knew what their fathers or their mothers were, and couldn't do anything about what their fathers or mothers could actually do. And I
Mhm.
think, you know, if it happens in the home that youngsters are disenfranchised or feel a sense of alienation, then they're going to go to these groups like the Hitler Youth and things like that, where they feel a sense of camaraderie, a sense
Yeah.
of belonging.
Mhm.
How important do you think it is to work with? parents and families and caregivers and that to bring them along in the process.
Yeah, so I only talk to children. I haven't actually got as far as talking to families about it. But I think I want to reach the children because, children are very much online all the time, and I just want to cut out the middleman and go straight to the kids, really, because they need to understand the tactics recruiters use, terrorist recruiters use, who they target, how they operate, the sort of things they say to them, and also how young people can recognize signs of radicalization in both themselves and in their mates even. And then also I tell them about, and if you see these signs or recognize these signs, this is how you can get help. So but I talk to them very much about um, stranger danger online, because a lot of young people play, for instance, computer games online with headphones, with total strangers they've never met. And I always say, don't give too much information, because they pretend to be your age, they pretend to be one of you, and they're really patient. And they'll talk to you about the game, or they'll talk to you about sport and fashion and music. They talk about anything on any of the channels, any of the social media platforms, not just gaming. But I always say, they will eventually say something to you like, "Oh, my mum and dad had a big argument yesterday. I think they're going to get divorced. My dad stormed out. And what about you? Are your mum and dad still together?" Or they'll say, "Oh, my dad was made redundant. We're going to have a financial difficulty. We may have to sell the house. Are your mum and dad still working? Have they been affected by
Yeah,
COVID?" Things
it's
like that. Any
gradually,
any information they can get,
yeah, yes,
you know.
gradually drawing people,
Yeah.
vulnerable youngsters
Yes.
into
Yeah.
believing that they have a group dynamic, or
Yeah.
at least somebody who understands them at their very core. And
Exactly.
that's not, and then um, that is dangerous. But you set up Martyn's Law.
Yeah.
Tell us about Martyn's Law and how it's progressed.
So Martyn's Law came to fruition because a year and a half after Martyn died, my daughters bought my husband some concert tickets for one of his favorite singers. And in the December, the concert was due to happen. So we went to Manchester for the first time in a long time. And I remember getting ready using my tiniest handbag with the assumption that, naively, I assumed since the attack, security is going to be top notch everywhere. And I said to my husband, "I'll take this little one, it'll make the bag search easier." And we got there, and nobody even checked my husband's entrance tickets, never mind any bag searches. There was nothing. We walked straight in, past staff, upstairs, sat down in our seats. And that really deeply upset me. And I was crying during the concert. And my husband saw me crying, and he said, "Oh, it's the songs, isn't it?" And I said, "No, I'm not even listening to the songs. I'm not listening to the concert. Leave me alone." Because I was preoccupied with this thought about security. Anyway, after Christmas and New Year, I started researching security at venues, and found out that way that actually security is only a recommendation, even to this day. So there's no legislation that mandates security at venues. And I felt I need to change that. So I set up a government petition, and with lots and lots and lots of prompting on Twitter and Facebook and whatever, it slowly crawled up to 23,500 signatures.
3,500
And,
signatures, yeah.
and you may think that's a lot, but actually halfway through my petition, two other ones emerged, and one of them, and they both overtook me by the hundreds of thousands within 2-3 weeks, not 6 months. One was Bring Back the Jeremy Kyle Show, and the other one was Bring Back plastic straws for McDonald's. So,
You
but
wonder about people, Figen. I mean,
uh,
you like a
yeah,
therapist and a counselor for many, many years. Can you actually get inside the mind of somebody that would think that
yeah,
the Jeremy Kyle show was more important to bring back than
yeah.
that's
I
yeah.
was thinking that, but it got me thinking. I realized what it was. And that kind of shocked me, because before Martyn died, I would have been the same. Not that I want Jeremy Kyle's or plastic straws, but I would have been oblivious to security because it wasn't on my radar. Because you
Yeah.
see, go to places, you see people in high-vis jackets, and you think they're security and they're trained. It didn't even occur to me that they're not, you know. But it made me realize that security is something the general public have zero idea about, and that's why I need to bring that law in. And so I'm working with the government. We have regular meetings, and they're updating me about the progress. And I've been to see the security ministers several times and had Zoom meetings with them, Teams meetings, sorry. So yeah, it's coming along nicely, and it will become legislation either this year or early next year.
So Martin's law will be all about putting security
Yes,
as a priority in all
yes,
venues. I mean, it must have been
yes.
difficult for you, though, Figen, going back into a venue after the event, because again, I deal with a lot of people who are not just survivors of genocide globally, but their families, because there is a second generation trauma victim, as you know. It just doesn't end with, it didn't end with Martin's death.
No,
You
no.
became a victim, your children became victims, your husband became a victim because, and a survivor, if you like. All became survivors of Martin's tragedy. And you're all going through a form of post-traumatic stress
Yes.
from the events in different ways. And one would imagine it would be difficult to walk into a concert with your little bag. I can just see you now, and not be thinking at some subliminal level that I wonder, is it secure? I wonder, is it safe? Until you realized it wasn't. They had
Yeah,
done nothing. They had learned no lessons.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't tend to go to a lot of concerts, but I encourage my children to go. I don't want my other children to live in fear and be continuously traumatized. So they are going to concerts, all of my children, at different venues in different towns. And I'm glad they do, because I don't want the terrorism to win and restrict us as a family.
Yeah, in a sense, I get a sense from you that everything is almost a defeat of terrorism, even from your very attitude to Salman Abedi, and the way you grieve personally. You don't grieve publicly, and the way you carry out your duties are all, in a sense, a tribute, say, to Martin, but also a defeat of hate that would probably want. You might think that the terrorists, and one would imagine that the terrorists would want people grieving
But
publicly,
yeah, yeah.
showing terror and
Mm.
fear. And you would say to people, the best way to defeat terrorism is not to allow it to happen, or not
Um,
to allow yourself to show that you're afraid.
Um, well, to me, it's about not let it affect you the way they
Yeah.
want to. Because when you think about what terrorism actually wants to achieve, it's an attack against the government. Or governments. It's not about individuals. A terrorist doesn't care who they kill and how many people they kill. They just want to make a statement. They want to gain notoriety. I personally feel that by forgiving Salman Abedi, I actually have taken the purpose of that particular attack away from our family. And I know Martyn was killed, and I, in theory, ought to be angry and sad and depressed and in despair. But the way I channeled my emotions,
What I was going to say
I
to you.
I just didn't go into anger. I channeled my emotion into. I remember thinking, a few days into the attack, I remember thinking, "You kill my baby, you watch what I'm going to do." And at that time, I had no idea what I was going to do, but I figured it out after the anniversary, the first anniversary. I went to schools and then I started Martyn's Law, and now I talk with the security industry, and I'm channeling it into learning and knowledge and
And spreading
understanding
that knowledge.
terrorism.
And spreading that knowledge.
Yeah, yeah, and also, I mean, forgiveness. You know, the world has become a really tough place to live in, and there's so much hate and anger about, and I feel I just I was at the time, one of the reasons I publicly forgave was because I felt that at the time, as the mother of a victim, I was kind of in a position to stop the cycle of hate. And that's one reason I did it.
Well, it's funny, I interviewed some time back a woman called Candace Mama from South Africa, and her father was set up by he and his friends who were members of the ANC were set up by Colonel Eugene de Kock, and
Mhm.
their transport was set up, and he shot at them. And in the end, when they weren't dead, he set it on fire, the truck on fire. Now, as a 7-year-old, she saw photographs in her mother's house of her father inside in the burnt out car that were taken. But eventually,
Mm.
she went and forgave de Kock and
Mhm.
campaigned for his release from prison.
Okay.
And I think, it's just, it struck me as the strongest thing anyone, I suppose, can
Mhm.
can do is to take the power back into
Yeah.
their own hands. Not sure I would be that forgiving as both you and Candace um, to um, to do that. I've
Mhm.
interviewed many people now who have been like you, who've chosen forgiveness and chosen to move on and make something of their memory and to use the terrible tragedy to progress a
Mhm.
dialogue about hate and about gang wars and about being part of terrorist organizations. It's an extraordinary, you're part of an extraordinary few people who could
Thank you.
actually do something like that, Figen.
I think it's important. I teach the children about forgiveness and kindness and Ubuntu, an African philosophy actually, and that's really important because I think young people need to learn about really good, solid values of humanity.
Tell us what
Uh,
it means.
so Ubuntu means I am because you are. It means community spirit. It means love, kindness, forgiveness, empathy, peace, compassion. It means all of those values that I personally hold dear, and I try to live by those
It means
values. So
positivity, basically.
yeah, but I teach those values to the children at schools.
But Figen, you not so long ago, and I have to actually mention here, above and below me, I've got two. Above is Be More Martin, and the little bumblebee with the heart in it. I was inspired to do that by the tattoo that you got. Now you don't like tattoos,
No,
as and neither do I, but you got the tattoo with Be More Martin. Could you show us
yeah,
your tattoo?
yeah. Hang on.
But and you chose to have a little bumblebee.
Was
Oh, right,
it's really
I
hard
know,
to show
in
that.
an awkward position. Yeah, it's there, but it's got a little bumblebee on it with a heart,
Yeah,
and
and yes.
you're planning on putting Ubuntu under
Yeah, I
it.
want to have the, just underneath the Be More hashtag Be More Martin underneath the B. I want to have the word Ubuntu. In fact, I'm such a firm believer of this word Ubuntu that I actually legally, officially named my house last month.
Ubuntu.
It's called Ubuntu My House. Yeah,
Ubuntu. Is that how it's spelled?
Ubuntu.
I was right, so
Yeah.
excellent. It's spelled as it's pronounced. But
Mm.
the green screen I chose was very interesting to me. I wanted it to be something, I suppose, meaningful. And Martin was prolific in his tweets,
Yes, he
as he
was.
was in his love for Coronation Street.
Yes.
He was a huge Coronation Street supporter, and he called his cat after one
Emily
of the
Bishop.
Emily Bishop.
Yeah,
Emily Bishop.
yeah,
Gosh. But it's funny. But I just saw that tweet, and I thought, God love him. You know, he was there and encouraging people to go down and buy your teddy bears.
yeah. Yeah, that I couldn't sell at this craft fair. It was actually a Christmas fair, and my friend wanted to share a Christmas stall with me, and she said that she was selling Christmas stuff that was flying off the shelf. Everybody was buying her stuff, and everybody looked at my vintage hearts and my bears and said, "Oh, they're cute," and then they'd go to her and buy her stuff. So I got bored and I texted Martin saying, "Oh, for God's sake, Martin, can you just help me send somebody down and see if I can sell some bears?" But anyway, so he did, and it went sort of viral. And yeah, so these pictures are from a book that I wrote again with Martin and Daniel, his brother. The two of them helped me. Because I was a therapist, I decided to write a teddy bear storybook for grown-ups, a therapeutic one, yeah. 16 bears with mental health issues, and yeah, they helped me publish it.
And they go around the world. There's a story about you leaving
Yeah.
teddy bears.
Ah,
I
yeah,
think
there
that's
he is.
very good. Honest to
Jordan
God, it's
Bear.
very good.
Yeah, he's at home with me at the moment, but he's due to go to Malia, to a Greek island, on Friday actually for a week. Yeah, so I left
You,
him. I usually photograph the bears I'm selling online worldwide in different scenarios, and I took one to London the year he died, 2 months after he died, to an award ceremony because he was writing for Attitude magazine, which is a gay magazine. And they invited us down because they were giving out a posthumous award for Martin. And they said, "Can you come and pick it up?" So we went, and I didn't realize how posh a dinner it was. I was too embarrassed to take this random bear out to photograph it there because there were celebrities and all sorts there. So I was just too shy. However, on the train home from London, I left him in a paper bag with a note saying, "I'm Martin's. I'm a bear that was knitted by Martin's mum. My name is Jordan Bear. His mum wants to see how far I can travel. Please don't keep me for more than a few days and pass me on." So that bear was picked up by an English guy who took him to a Manchester hotel, who passed him on to somebody in Wales, who then took him to Mexico on holiday. And then he stayed in America for 3, 4 months. And then he was in Bali, he was in China, he was in Africa, he was in the Swiss Alps, he was in Paris and Brussels. You name it, he's been everywhere. He's just traveling all the time.
but but Figen, it was a fantastic, genius idea, really, to draw attention the both to your work as well as to you and Martin's story, and by just leaving him on a train and just let's see how
Yeah,
far he can go around the world. And people have
yeah,
sent you. Did you post your email address
yeah.
for that?
Well, he's got. I left my. Well, yeah, I think I left my number or something. But actually, he's got his own Facebook page. Yeah, it's called Jordan's Journey.
Jordan's journey. And where is Jordan
Yeah.
now? Is he's at
Well,
home
at the
with you?
moment he's downstairs with me, but I'm passing him on to somebody who's going on a 10-day trip to a Greek island.
Has he
He's
not
not been
been
to
to the
Greece yet.
has
He's
he
not been to Greece.
has he not been to the sunny climes of Ireland yet?
He has actually. He has been
Has
to
he?
Ireland.
Has he?
Yeah, he's
Where?
been to Ireland.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? I think that's absolutely lovely. It's do you know, it's amazing how the small little things sometimes can be the ones that actually catch people's heart.
Yes.
You know, you could be trying forever to think up of a marketing ploy, if you like, as a business or as a charity, and
Hmm.
something like just leaving a teddy bear on the
Yeah.
on a seat on a train and hoping that somebody will join
Yeah.
in the spirit of it.
You want to see the state of him. He's of course now got his own face mask as well. Uh, but he is so disheveled. People have liposuction. I have to do the opposite with him. I have to unpick him and stuff him occasionally because he's very dirty and very limp now. But I
So
keep
you're
sort of fattening him up.
so
Um,
he's having what you call it, um, injections every
yeah,
now and
Botox. Yeah,
Botox. I couldn't think of the word Botox. He's having Botox injections of cotton wool.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't think it would catch on, but people love it, and people are queuing up to have him and take him on holiday. So, yeah,
And every teddy you knit has a different problem, if you like, or a
yeah,
different challenge.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the teddy bears in the book were mainly mental health, or all mental health issues. But I sell the bears, and each one has a different story, and it's either a funny story or something that happened in my life or somebody else's life I know, and I write a story about it. And sometimes, if it's Mental Health Awareness Week, I will write about mental health. If it's about kindness, I will do that. So I just invent stories about the bears all the time.
Figen, as a writer myself, well, I'm currently writing my second book. I've just managed last night to get through the first chapter. Eight more to go, or seven more to go. It's not an easy task, but as a psychotherapist, former psychotherapist, well, always one, and counselor, you must have a wealth of, say, experiences and stories that you can almost fictionalize for each teddy bear. So
Yeah,
each
yeah,
person's, I'm at the moment telling different people's stories of childhood under Nazism, and
yeah,
so it's four men and four women, and they were all children at the time. So you could technically, and that I presume is what you do. Each teddy bear is a different person's story of
yeah,
surviving
yeah,
depression, suicide,
yeah, yeah,
um, um, uh, grief. So each teddy bear has a specific meaning. It's almost like the Care Bears, do you know or those
yeah,
bears that you can
yeah.
buy with the little breathing
Mhm,
hearts inside.
mhm.
When you buy a teddy
Yeah.
bear, it's a teddy bear. You specifically go for one that maybe speaks to grief, and another that speaks maybe
Yeah,
to
I mean, I'm
depression.
trying to, if I'm honest, I'm trying to avoid too heavy a story because one of the reasons I mean, on my website, on my, sorry, Depop site, where I sell them, I actually say that because I sell vintage hearts as well, and my shop's called Imperfect Hearts. And the reason I called it Imperfect Hearts was because each heart I deliberately don't make super equal or super neat because I want to show that each of us is represented with a heart and each of us are unique and we're not perfect, we're imperfect as human beings. So the hearts represent the imperfections in humans, but the bears for me are the main purpose for me for the bears is to bring playfulness back into adults, because the bears are not for children, they're for grown-ups. And I just want that playfulness that we forget about when we grow up back in people's lives.
Yeah.
To me, that's
And
really important.
what was it like, Vegan, to get, I suppose, for any of us who are, say, British subjects or whatever, the ultimate, I suppose, in awards would be to receive an award from the royal family for your work. You received an OBE on the 24th, isn't it, of June,
Mhm. Yeah,
2022. So it's
yeah,
very new. I've had
yeah,
people on here all the time. I've had Dame Helen Hyde and Gillian Walls Perry. They're all OB or MBs and OBs and BEMs, and I'm suffering with jealousy syndrome recently to you all. But what was it like to receive
um,
that? How did you actually receive the
it,
OB?
it was kind of bittersweet because obviously the reason behind it is you can see my tattoo there.
Actually,
um, the reason behind getting the OBE is obviously an incredibly sad one, and I personally would much rather live in a shed, in a garden shed, honestly, and have no money and be poor as hell,
And
and
have
have Martyn back. But I can't do that. So the work I've done, everything I do it in Martyn's memory, and um, I think that award is for Martyn, not for me.
But that's what I was going to say. The awards that people receive awards, and others think naturally the award is for Figen Murray, but really the award is for Figen Murray, the work she's done, and for the memory of Martyn
Yeah,
and the others, the other victims of Salman Abedi.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I suppose, I mean, if one is thinking compassionately, he was the 23rd victim, if you like,
yeah.
victim of his own actions, which is
Yes.
very sad, very, very sad indeed. This is, I'm just going to play actually you can listen to this now in utter embarrassment, but you were absolutely wonderful in here. But you haven't looked at it before, so here we go.
No, I haven't.
You haven't listened to it before, but
Yeah, it's all a little bit surreal. Obviously, 5 years ago, our life changed, and 5 years ago, I wouldn't have thought I'm here at the palace receiving an award that obviously, all the work I do, I didn't do for that purpose. But yeah, it's very humbling, and really, I'm really grateful to my family that they've supported me through the 5 years to be able to do the work I do. Well, he obviously clearly did his homework. He knew about Martyn's Law, and I told him about the other work I do, namely going into schools, talking to young people about the dangers of online radicalisation, and he was interested. So, yeah, it was very nice. I was sat at my desk at home and an email came initially, and I remember pushing the chair right back, looking at the screen, thinking, what? It was really strange.
So it
Yeah.
was a big surprise.
It was, yes, yes.
And how are you going to celebrate it?
Well, I've got a meeting this afternoon to meet some colleagues in the industry to do with counter-terrorism this afternoon. Probably have a few drinks with them, and then tonight watching Hamilton.
watching Hamilton. Watching Hamilton. It's such a fast-paced life you live, Figen, out and
Gosh,
about,
yeah,
celebrating, watching Hamilton. A friend of mine actually living in Dorset, she's a Hamilton fan. I've never watched it, never at all watched it. So, Figen, where to from here now? What are you?
gosh, yeah. My life, I mean, obviously I haven't gone back to my previous job. I couldn't, from that day onwards, I couldn't go back. So I'm now fully immersed. I'm really rubbish at maths, but I'm excellent in networking. So I've networked so much in the security sector and counterterrorism and policing that I do lots and lots of talks at conferences. And up to now, they have been national, but in May I went to Washington DC, and in September I'm going to talk at the UN, United Nations Global Terrorism Conference as well. So I've gone slightly international now as well. So
Yeah. But you're a busy woman. You're
I am,
you're
yes,
you're you're a very, very busy woman.
yeah.
And have you met? Do many of the parents and the families of the Manchester terror attack, do they meet up at any stage? Have
Um,
they formed a
yeah.
group or anything?
Well, there's different groups that emerge. There is a little therapy group that emerged, grief group, sorry. Uh, then there are some of the families who live near each other. They form groups. Uh, we were sat a lot with some of the families in court on a daily basis throughout the inquiry for 18 months. So we got to know some of the people. But actually, now the inquiry is finished, I am so busy. Honestly, it's like a full-time job, this, so I have not been able to meet anybody. So yeah, but I do
But
know that there's pockets of people who meet. The problem with the arena attack is that the people who were killed, most of them come from different geographic areas in the UK, so it's hard for them to meet up, really.
This is a photograph of those that were
Yeah.
in
Yes.
the Manchester, for anybody who's watching this who don't know. And there's Martyn top, second from the top on the left hand side. You know, when you look at the little girl, I can't remember her name.
Safi Rose, and she would have been Safi Rose would have been 14. She was 8. She was the youngest. She would have been 14.
The first at the bottom here on the right.
Yeah, she would have been 14 this week.
And the young couple, the young couple both died. You know, it's just, and all those lovely people whose lives were just snuffed out by insanity or evil or whatever, but certainly not the actions of somebody of a normal mind.
No,
You know, I mean, you know, you just, and you know, I Figen, so very much for being my guest on my story today. I was quite nervous, actually, wanting to interview you because I've wanted to for so long, and you've been so busy. And
I know.
And we, you know, eventually got there. But because your story is so raw, still after 5 years, I'm sure you think it's only yesterday.
Oh, it feels like only yesterday, definitely. Yeah.
It was, and I wish you huge success, and please keep us posted on Martyn's Law, and I'm sure it's going to be a huge success, and I'm sure you're going to get it through. Thank you again for coming on.
Thank you.
Well,
thank you for having me on.
You're very welcome. Before we go, you were born in Turkey.
Yes, I was.
How lovely was that? Because a friend of mine is living in Kusadasi, Tony Fleming, and he's Irish, an ex-prison officer, and he moved to Kusadasi and loves every minute of it.
I'm sure he will. It's lovely there. It's beautiful there.
And you came here at the age of
2.5. Well, I came to Germany at the age of 2.5. I moved to the UK in 1983.
So you speak German as well?
Yeah, I was brought up in German.
Wow, I always admire people who have several languages. My friend's daughters, her husband is from Libya. So her daughters are Arabic and English, and they speak English as good as their Arabic with Irish accents.
Yeah.
So it's funny. But again, thank you, Figen, for coming on my story.
Thanks for having me, and sorry about the difficulties earlier, the technical ones and everything else.
These things happen. Well, Shindera Leshon Clor, that's the end of the show for today. Until the next time, Lacuna of Day, Bawalam Tugaler Chiacona, Sonasagas Grow. I wish you peace, happiness, and love. August Gadesh of Slán. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Figen.